I have with me Zach Laws and Amanda Spears. I'm Riley Chow, and at the Emmys this year for Best Lead Actor in a Comedy Series, we have Anthony Anderson for Blackish. He submitted Hope. Aziz Ansari for Master of None with Parents. Will Forte, Last Man on Earth. 30 Years of Science, Down the Tubes. William H. Macy for Shameless. I Only Miss Her When I'm Breathing. Thomas Middleditch, Silicon Valley, The Empty Chair, and last year's winner Jeffrey Tambor for Transparent. With Man on the Land. It seems like another easy one to call here for Jeffrey Tambor. Do you disagree, Zach?
No, I do not. I think you got to give it to Tambor. And, I mean, as a Transparent fan, I think that he submitted the best possible episode for him. I mean, this is a guy who, like, I first became aware of him, as I'm sure everybody else did, as Hank Kingsley on The Larry Sanders Show, which he never won an Emmy for. And then there's George Bluth on Arrested Development, which he never won an Emmy for. And I think the brilliant thing about his performance as Maura Pfefferman is that you never see an echo of either of those two in this character. It is truly transformative, and I think that's why he won last year and sort of broke the streak of, shall we say, comedy winners winning in this category. Because it is a lot more dramatic than what we're used to seeing in these comedy lead actor wins. But I think that has a lot to do with just the brilliance of his performance, and I think you got to give it to him again.
What do you think, Amanda?
I think this is one where if it were under the tapes, I probably would not have him in first place, because this is very dramatic. It is nominated for directing, but it's nominated for directing because of that very intricate flashback, I think, and the way they kind of merge those together. For me, it's not really funny, which is a shame, because there are two very deserving funny performances that I think normally we would be discussing between the two. But he's probably going to win this at least once or twice more. I mean, he deserves it. I loved him on Arrested Development. I hope he and Tony Hale present together. That's my suggestion to the producers. They can present as their Bluth characters, and I would be thrilled.
That'd be fun. Yeah, last year I would have predicted Anthony Anderson under the old system easily. It reminded me a lot of the Jim Parsons, John Cryer performances where he's lying to his wife about getting a vasectomy, and he's a bumbling dad like Ty Burrell and all that kind of stuff. But under the new system, the tapes don't really matter. They're not going as hard on dramedies as they did under the old system. Jeffrey Tambor right now is coming off of a Critics' Choice win, a SAG win, and Transparent is still nominated in many key categories, albeit not as many as last year. In second place, I've got William H. Macy, just because he won SAG 2 years ago. Because you got to assume the worst with the Emmys. I would love to put Thomas Middleditch higher, who I think would be winning under the old system, because he's got a very good episode where, again, there's a lot of broad physical humor. But he wasn't nominated the last couple of years, so I'm not sure how much name recognition he has.
I think it's going to take a while for Thomas Middleditch to win, if he ever does win. I mean, it took 3 seasons, or 4 seasons. I'm getting mixed up here.
3.
They're on 3, okay. So it took 3 seasons for him to get nominated, and the show, I don't think, won any Emmys until last year, right? It didn't win any in its first season. It won a couple of below-the-line Emmys in its second year. Am I right about that?
Yeah, it's probably more significant that it won a couple last year, though, because that was under the popularity system.
Right. It's growing in esteem, is what I'm trying to say. Okay. Like, it's building every single year. And this year it just kind of, it got more nominations than I think the last 2 seasons combined, and especially in key categories like 2 directing nominations and 2 writing nominations and Thomas Middleditch. So I think it's growing in esteem, but I think it's going to take a while for him to win, because he is kind of a newer face.
I think it's hard to break through when there's a lot of name recognition, and we've seen people like Matt LeBlanc in this category several times, and Don Cheadle, and it took a while for us to kind of know who he is. You could say the same thing for some of the actors and actresses on Game of Thrones, that when they started popping up season 3 as nominees, they were more well known. I love his episode. It checks a lot of boxes under the tape system that would lead to a win. He stutters, he stammers, he gives us this huge, long monologue, and then at the end he does this crazy chair pratfall, which is great. And this is the one category we've been saying they're missing, is an acting nomination to be in contention for series. So they're looking better and better. But yeah, I don't think this is his year. I have him in third because his series is nominated. It's nominated for a lot of writing and directing. And he's really, really good in this episode. If anyone is watching the show or sits down to watch these, and they're like 20 minutes, people, except for one. You're not going to be out a lot. You're going to be out like 2 hours of your time. It's really hilarious. The person I have in second is Aziz Ansari, because I think he, to me, has the funniest scene out of all of them. I want to see this in a coffee shop myself.
You got to live in LA in order to see that.
I'll tell you off air, this is crazy. I saw it at a coffee shop once. But yeah, I would love to see this, but it was the laugh out loud moment for all of them. And I think he's going to get a few bonus points, because right before they do like their cold opening, and then they do the credits, and we see written by and directed by, and it's nominated for both. So I think that he is in a really good spot in number 2. I'm about a 90% sure that Tambor is going to repeat, but if Ansari did it, I wouldn't be like, what the? I could see how it could happen.
He's also got like the hot new show too, right? I mean, Master of None is the new kid on the block in the comedy series race, and it's a first season show. It's a younger, skewing demographic show, and it is a very funny episode, but it's also a very touching episode. It deals with a lot of universal themes. It's about him ignoring his dad, and he gets his real parents to play his parents. I wish his dad had been nominated for a guest
I
actor
loved
Emmy.
His dad.
So it is a fantastic episode. I do think he has a real shot at winning.
And he is kind of overdue, because he was overlooked for Parks and Recreation. Especially a couple of those seasons. He had some knockout episodes, especially season 3. I loved him in Soulmates with Amy Poehler. But you just don't know if enough people know him from both projects now. I would feel better if someone like Claire Danes had gotten into guest actress in a comedy, because then I would know that it's not just him, but all of the nominations are around him. So he's the one that I was really... I think he's probably Tambor's biggest competition. I think Anderson submitted wrong. I love Hope. It's basically a 30-minute live action morality tale. But I think the season opener, the word where his kid says a word I'm not going to say, and then he gets at the end to give his big comedic monologue, would have been a little bit better than this, because it's so serious and it's such an ensemble piece. But I don't think it really gives him the spotlight that he needs. He would have been better submitting what Ross submitted, because he at least has that crazy drowning scene.
I think it's really interesting, and it seems to be a recent trend in this category, because, I mean, like we were saying earlier, it is Best Comedy Actor. And in the last 5 years, before Tambor won, we saw Jim Parsons win 4 times for The Big Bang Theory, and interrupted in there by John Cryer for 2.5 Men, which I think was more of a, thank you, we're sorry that you had to deal with crazy Charlie Sheen for the last...
Well, his
But he was still
episode was
funny.
a great submission.
Yeah, he was funny, and he directed his episode, and he had a lot of pratfalls.
Yeah, no, I'm not trying to disparage him. I'm just saying, like, I think there was a lot going on that year that was probably had to do with him winning that Emmy than just him being the best of the nominees. But anyway, we saw in those last 5 years, very traditional kind of multicam sitcom winners, interrupted by Tambor with a much more dramatic kind of performance. And with Anthony Anderson, even Will Forte in Last Man on Earth to a certain extent, and Aziz Ansari to a certain extent, submitting episodes that have more dramatic pathos to them.
I think Aziz's episode is the most well-rounded because you get a lot of comedy, but you also get this really nice, touching moment, which is why I have him in second. He gets a lot of bonus points for writing and directing the episode himself, and then he gives the most well-rounded performance. Mm-hmm. His is at least funny. His and Middleditch's are funny. Forte, I thought he really had a chance last year, but this year I just don't see it happening. And then I don't know how Macy is sticking around.
I'm really kind of shocked because I thought this last season of Last Man on Earth was better than the first season and could actually have an uptick in nominations. But it's way down to just Forte. And I think he did submit a good episode because, I mean, not to spoil anything, but there's a season-long arc about him and his brother, played by Jason Sudeikis, reconnecting after thinking that both were dead. And there's a really kind of sad and heartbreaking conclusion.
He had funnier, though.
He did have funnier, yeah. Just like Anthony Anderson.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ant.
Yeah, it's surprising that he got in after all the nominations for the show last year were tied to the pilot. Like, I wondered if voters had even seen beyond that first episode. Just to comment on William H. Macy's episode, I found it actually very comedic. I always think of Shameless as a drama, so that was a pleasant surprise in the comedy category.
Wasn't it? It was in drama. It was submitted in drama for its first few seasons, and then only 2 years ago, it switched over to comedy, and that's when Macy started getting nominated for it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's one of those confusing, because it is an hour-long show, and under their new rules, they're not supposed to make it a drama, but I do want to say a little bit in defense of Anthony Anderson's episode, because I think that episode was something that was written for the Emmys. I mean, it's a very topical episode. It's very well done, and he has a beautiful monologue right in the middle of it where he's talking about when Barack Obama was elected president and the fear that he felt watching him on Inauguration Day walking around out in the open thinking that something terrible was going to happen.
But they cut away. That's my problem, is that he didn't get to act. Like in the first episode of the season when he's giving his big, long monologue, he gives his monologue. We see him acting. This time, they're cutting away to all this footage, so he's just kind of narrating it at that point. Mm-hmm. So that's just kind of. I mean, I love the episode. I was surprised it did not get a writing nomination. Nothing to disrespect the multiple ones for Silicon Valley or Veep, but
did it really need 2 or 3 each? I mean,
yeah.
I mean, couldn't they put in something like Blackish or Kimmy Schmidt or Transparent? I mean, a lot of these shows that appear a lot weaker because they don't have writing or directing nominations, it's mostly because they gave them all to 2 shows on HBO.
Yeah, which is why I have Middleditch in third, because I think that was this nomination was the missing ingredient for Silicon Valley. So now we have to kind of take it a little bit more seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I will move up Thomas Middleditch to second, just because we saw last year so many of the winners were just kind of vote the ticket wins, where they just voted for the most popular show. Silicon Valley does seem to me to be the most popular comedy series that's nominated in this category. Maybe not among the actors branch, but I'll put them in second.
And it is a series that stars a lot of unknown actors. They're not household names, so we really shouldn't fault them for taking a couple years to finally break through. I mean, it took Everybody Loves Raymond 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not something that we should say, oh, there must be a problem. No.
Yeah, I think next year you'll probably see somebody like T.J. Miller finally get in, and
Zach Woods, I love.
yeah,
He's my
um,
favorite.
my too.
All right. Any last thoughts, Amanda?
I'm curious how many of these Tambor can win. I think he's probably got this one pretty well locked up. Out of the two for lead on the comedy side, I'd say he's the most vulnerable, but I still have him like at a 90% chance of winning. So, but yeah, I'm more curious if he's going to win for 2 or 3 times. But sooner or later, someone's going to come along who's popular and funny, and then that's going to end this.
What do you say, Zach?
I'm sticking with Tambor, but I think that one of three people, either Aziz or, excuse me, Thomas Middleditch or Anthony Anderson, could unseat him. But I got to give this to Tambor. So.
Thanks very much.